Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning, students. I hope you all are good and healthy. So today I would be continuing with the poem My Shadow from the Marigold textbook. As I have completed the explanation of first stanza, I would be explaining you the rest two stanzas of the poem. Before moving ahead, I would like to tell you one thing, students, that I got the response of one of the student for the riddle that I asked, and I was really happy to see that response. So students, I request you all to reply your answers whenever I ask you the questions in the comment box. You can also write down your queries or doubts in the comment box and we would try to solve it as soon as possible. So let's start our poem My Shadow by Robert Louis Stevenson. So you can see the image over here, students, a boy who is noticing his own shadow. In the same way, I have one fun activity for you all. You all have to go outside and notice or observe your own shadow during the 3 parts of the day. That is in the morning after sunrise, in the afternoon, and in the evening before sunset. On the basis of your observation, you have to answer me when was your shadow longest and at what time your shadow was shortest. You have to write down your answers in the comment box as soon as you see the video. So students, now let's start with the explanation. But before the explanation of second and third stanza, let's just revise the first stanza. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. He is very, very like me from the heels up to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. As I told you, students, that this poem is written from the perspective of a young child who is amazed to see his own shadow. He says that he has a little shadow which goes everywhere along with him. He thinks that the shadow might be afraid of staying alone and so it stays with him wherever he goes. He doesn't know what can be the use of shadow except that it follows him everywhere. He says that the shadow is very similar to him as it is the reflection of the boy himself. So obviously it's going to be very similar from heels up to the head. That means from head to toe the shadow looks same as the boy. And he notices that whenever he makes the movement, his shadow also makes the movement. And when he tries to jump onto the bed, the shadow jumps first into the bed before he does. So students, I hope that you are clear with the first stanza. So now let's move on towards our second stanza. So let's just read out the second stanza. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow. Not at all like proper children, which is always very slow. In this stanza, the child speaks about one funny thing which he notices about the shadow. That is a strange thing about the shadow, and that is it has the ability to grow. It is beyond the ability of a child to understand that how can shadow increase in the size so immediately. As you know that the boy thinks of his shadow as another boy who accompanies him wherever he goes, and so he compares with the other children in the poem. The child thinks that normally the kids grow very slow and so they are considered as proper children, but his shadow, who is another boy for him, grows very fast and so it is an improper child. So in this stanza, we can see a contrast between the real child and the shadow, which according to the child is another boy. So students, do you have any idea why is your shadow growing suddenly or shrinking suddenly? Well, that is because of the position of the sun in the sky. In the morning and evening, the sun is low in the sky, and so at the low angle, the shadow formed is taller or longer. And when the sun is high in the sky, the angle is high, and so the shadows formed are shorter in size. Now let's see the next four lines of the stanza 2. For he sometimes shoots up taller like an India rubber ball, and he sometimes gets so little that there's none of him at all. The speaker in these lines uses the pronoun he to refer to a shadow. So, for him, the shadow is another boy, and that's why he is using the pronoun he for the shadow. He compares the quick growth of the shadow with that of an India rubber ball, which bounces up high in the sky, and it happens so fast that one can hardly follow it. In the same way, he says that sometimes the shadow gets so little that we cannot notice him at all. That means the shadow shrinks so much that hardly anything is left of him. Normally, the shadow doesn't form when the day is cloudy or when it is dark, and the shadow in the afternoon are also very short. Let's see the third stanza. One morning very early, before the sun I was up. I rose and found the shining dew on every buttercup. In this stanza, the child speaks about one morning when he woke up very early, that is, before sunrise, and he noticed a very beautiful scenery outside. He found the shining dew on every buttercup. Buttercup means yellow flowers, and dew means water droplets which are there on the flower when he woke up and saw early in the morning. But my lazy little shadow, like an errant sleepy head, had stayed at home behind me and was fast asleep in bed. The child notices that his little shadow has missed out to see the beautiful scenery which he witnessed. The child thinks that his little shadow is lazy and errant, that means bad one, and it is sleepyhead, that means it wants to sleep more and it is totally inattentive. The child complains that his shadow didn't accompany him to his early morning journey and remained in the bed fast asleep. So the child thinks that this was a wrong decision by his shadow. So students, I hope that you are clear with the poem. If you have any doubts, you can write it down in the comment box. We would try to solve your doubts as soon as possible. So students, here I have given you the glossary of the poem, which you would be writing it down in your notebook after writing the poem in neat and clean handwriting. Till then, take care students.